Creating an innovation climate, in other words, an organisation that supports and promotes innovation, consists of really trying to understand different dimensions of the organisation. For example, challenge and involvement. To what extent do you try to design jobs or tasks to try to challenge and stretch people to perform at their best? And what degree of involvement do people have in their job? Some degree of freedom or autonomy, so that either what they do or how they do it allows some scope for innovation and creativity. Trust and openness, really allowing some sort of autonomy and some ability to take initiative in the organisation. Also some slack in time or resources, but also some support in tools and techniques to allow individuals and groups to work beyond their sort of day job. And also in organisations there's some role for some sort of playfulness and humour to promote innovation. And also conflict and debate. Often conflicts portrayed as a negative attribute, but in small doses can really promote sort of novel outcomes and stimulate creativity. And finally, risk-taking. Risk-taking is obviously a characteristic of entrepreneurs, but is often overstated. So the trick here is really to understand the degree of risk. And what you find for each of these climate factors is not simply a linear relationship, that more equals better. So for example, more risk-taking equals a better outcome, but you find that they have a sort of inverted U-shape relationship, a so-called curvilinear relationship. So for example, on the horizontal axis you have some climate factor, for example autonomy, from low to high, and on the vertical axis you have some measure of innovation outcomes, for example the number of new products or creativity, say, of a new service. And what you find is at low levels of the climate factor you get low levels of innovation for a whole bunch of reasons. For example, in terms of autonomy, that there's no scope for innovation or creativity. But conversely, at very high levels of the climate factor you get also, but for different reasons, low levels of innovation. So for example, in case of autonomy, if there's too much autonomy, then the outcomes often lack direction or plausibility and therefore are difficult to implement. So often you find for each of the climate factors there is a sort of sweet spot, a sort of optimum peak amount of the climate factor for any particular organisation. So the trick really is to look at each of those dimensions in a systematic way and try to identify what that peak or sweet spot is for any particular context and opportunity.